Welcome, everyone. We are the Illini chapter for IDEA. That's the Illini branch is part of Eastern Central Illinois. Our president, Lisa, is here today, and our other assistant president is Annette, and myself, Ashley. Nice to meet you all. This is going to be our first meeting of the school year, and we're going to host hopefully a monthly meeting throughout the entire school year. That's our goal for the year. And we hope to offer a lot of opportunities like today's session with Jeanette and with Jim. We'll have PDHs available through IDEA at the end of the session. And if you know or happen to know anybody who registered for today's event and isn't able to attend, we'll also make sure to share out a link that they can have as of the recording that's today. Thanks, Jeanette.
Thanks, Ashley. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Jeanette Dopp-Heidi. Welcome to NCSA's Cybersecurity Division Security Talk for K through 12 teachers. I'll kind of be hosting and emceeing the event. Our presenter today is Jim Eyrich. Jim is the manager of the Incident Response and Security team at NCSA. He has 15 years of experience in higher ed, networking and security, and over 25 years in K through 12 IT. Before we begin the presentation, I have a few things to note. First, this presentation is being recorded. Second, participants are welcome to ask questions in the chat. We have scheduled points of the presentation where we will take your questions, so just type them in the chat and we'll get to them at that point of the presentation. And then Jim, if you could advance to the next slide. I added this disclaimer. This information is being shared obviously for educational purposes. It's not meant to overrule your district's policies. Whenever in doubt, always discuss with your IT department first. And with that, I'll hand things over to Jim. Jim, welcome.
Thank you. All right, so I guess we're just going to get into it. We have 4 major sections. One of them is to talk about account and passwords. Second one is about multi-factor authentication, phishing scams, and then public Wi-Fi stuff. And we have questions after every section. And honestly, if you want to just put a chat in and we'll look at it, and I have no problems being interrupted. So I have the chat open and Jeanette's monitoring the chat, and feel free the rest of the panel, if you just want to say, hey, stop, answer this question. I'm good with that. I probably can fill an hour. It does help. I like it when people ask questions. So we'll go from there. All right. So first one is going to be an account and password hygiene. One of the ones, and so this is specifically about school district, K-12 things, is that I would suggest that everybody should have an email account separate from their work account. You should have a personal email. And there's all kinds of problems, and I can like Jeanette said, I've worked in K-12 IT for 25 years, and I've seen a lot of this stuff. Recently, we had so what happens after separation if you don't do this? We had somebody that their health insurance was tied to their school district email. They retired. Luckily, I guess the district that I do consulting for has is nice and accommodating, is that we actually turned this person's account back on for 6 months while they work through the process with their insurance company of migrating to a new personal Gmail account. Other reasons that you might not want your personal stuff in your work email is that your work email may be subject to monitoring. Thing to remember, and I'm not saying your district is doing this or any of the ones that I work for do this, but it is the work's email, and it is their legal right to actually go through and look at your inbox if they want to. It would be, they should have that in a policy or whatever, but the legal precedent is absolutely there for them to be able to do that. They can also do content enforcement. So they might be filtering things. They might say, you don't ever need to get your Amazon emails sent or delivered to your inbox, or something else that they don't think is work related, and those messages just might be getting deleted, or they might be going to some policy group, and then some IT person has to come talk to you, or they're going to talk to your principal, and your principal going to say, why are you having these emails delivered to your work address? And then there's retention policies. So work emails may be either messages may have an actual policy that says that they don't stick around long. There are different rules. regarding education, or even if this would be a business thing about retention of emails, either like even if you hit delete, it's actually saved in a vault, so it's discoverable in a legal process later. Or they may actually have a policy that says we don't want you keeping around emails for 10 years or past 10 years, because we don't want them to be discoverable, or go through the hassle of having things that are that old and having to go through them if something happens at a legal some sort of legal procedure. For personal account, if you use, this is mixing it the other way. So if you're you're having work things sent into a personal email account, first of all, you might cause that your personal email account, you'll have to hand over your credentials, or somehow allow a lawyer or a law enforcement agency to have access to your email so that they can do discovery. If something happens at work and they find out that you've been discussing these things in a personal email account, they might decide they need to troll through your personal email account to look through related communications. It might be a violation of work policy to actually use a personal email account for work things for the reasons above, like, monitoring and retention and content enforcement. And they're going, oh, you're bypassing our policies by using a personal account. And so they'll just say you can't use a personal account. And then I like to say that, if you're on vacation, I know school teacher vacation is a little different than the rest of us, but is that way you can still look at your personal email and not see work things or reminders of work things during the summer. If you're in a school district where you don't start hearing from your principal until August, or you don't want to hear from your principal while you're on vacation, make sure they only send to your work account, and then don't check your work account when you're on vacation. And somebody asked a question about personal devices and work email. That would be up to the department. I personally have all my work email on my phone. I have no problem with that. That's a convenience. I can go do something in the building and know that somebody can still get a hold of me. I don't actually have a problem with using that. Your work may have a problem with that. There may be a policy that says you can't do that. The school districts that I work for, they're happy for people to have more communications. So that we have fairly liberal policies on being able to put work things on your personal devices. Did that answer your question, Chris? Oops. Okay, we did that right. Okay. The next one I'm going to talk about is avoiding third-party single sign-ons. Originally, this was about single sign-on, so you may be familiar with this. I've seen more K-12, and we're also seeing this at U of I. We've seen it for a couple of years at U of I, but I'm seeing it starting to trickle down into K-12. It's called SSO, Single Sign-On. It's where you sign on to a single web page in the morning, or you sign into your Chromebook, and then you're automatically logged into other services. It's very convenient and it's wonderful as an enterprise tool. I am absolutely against it in my personal life when it comes to, you go to a web page and it says, hey, sign in with Facebook, sign with Google, sign in with Apple ID. I don't like doing any of those things. And I'm going to talk about why. What happens if for some reason somebody steals let's say you love doing signing with Facebook because you're always on Facebook, you log into Facebook, and then everywhere you go, it just automatically works. You don't have to remember passwords and log in. What happens if for some reason Facebook decides that you have violated their terms of service or some guideline that they have, and they disable your account? Now you can't get into any of those services. I don't know if people heard it, I got put in Facebook jail. Not me, I don't use Facebook. But, if you did and they put you in jail and you can't use your Facebook account for 10 days, does that also mean you can't, log into the New York Times for 10 days if you pay for that and you were using login with Facebook there? The other issue is you're putting your trust in somebody else. In 2018, Facebook actually had a breach and they lost 50 million account informations, including SSO token. And an SSO token is basically the key. So in the morning when you log into Facebook, they'd give you a token. And then these web pages, when you click on login with Facebook, it'd say, oh, do you have that token? Yes. Okay, you're logged in. And so if people grabbed your Facebook SSO token while that token was still valid, they could use that to log in into any other web page that you had used login with Facebook with. Another one is Apple, because the Epic Gaming Company is suing Apple, or they're suing each other. In 2020, Apple decided that they were not going to let people use Apple ID to log into Epic. So if that's how you were, if that was how you logged into the Epic Game Store, that would just stop working. I'm assuming that they actually sent out lots of emails and said, hey, by the way, this is happening. You need to move to another stuff. But if you didn't do that, you might be out of luck. The other issue is that the reason Facebook and Google and Apple, certainly Facebook and Google, offer this service is tracking. They actually get told every website that you log into using this service. So they see where you're going. Now, back again, I want to reiterate, I am not against workplace SSO. In fact, at the school district I work in, we just finally rolled out a new SIS system this year, and it uses Google SSO. And since most of our staff and all of our students use Chromebooks, when they're logged into the Chromebook, they can go to the Student Information System webpage, and it says, pick which Google account to log into. You pick your school one, and it goes, done, you're logged in. If you pick the wrong one, it just says, I don't know who you are, try again. But it's very convenient. So now staff and students no longer have to remember a separate username and password to log into our student information system. While at the same time, I can control. So let's say we heard a student is having a problem. Students and their passwords are just a whole ball of wax on their own. Is that, let's say I hear that a student is they've lost control of their password. So I don't like to call it hacking, because it's very unlikely that a student hacked the password out of another student. More likely they either told them, whispered it to their friend, or they shoulder surfed. That's not hacking. And I get told that, well, if that was their student information system before their password, I would have had to go into the SIS system, reset their password, disable their account, whatever. Now I can do that just from going into Google, my Google admin tools. I can say, this student has a new password, reset all their login tokens. And now whoever had the old password can't get in. It's very nice that the central IT can disable accounts in case of problems immediately, without having to figure out all the different passwords that a staff member has for all the different systems. All right. Okay, so let's talk about passwords. So let's say you're either for your SSO or for all the systems that don't support SSO that you need to use. Every password should be random, and I mean real random, not I smack the keys on my keyboard. You will find, and studies have shown, people can't pick random passwords. Even when you're thinking if you got told, please pick 40 passwords, random passwords, we could put them in, we can analyze them and see that they were not completely randomized across the character sets that were available to you. And that is a weakness. Go to a password generator. There's plenty of them on the internet that have good reputation. I think passwordgenerator.net or something. I usually just go to Google or DuckDuckGo and password generator. It's password saver. The password managers I'm going to talk about later often have password generators in them. So I like to say that you should pick a long password, the max allowed by the site, although that can cause problems. And so today, at the level of attacking that we see with passwords, there's no real reason to have a password more than 31 characters. And then don't ever reuse passwords across any site. And then obviously don't let people watch you type a password. That's we call that shoulder surfing, basically. And we've definitely had people. I was part of an incident investigation where our school alert system was used to send out messages in the middle of the night. And I believe it was because a student watched a teacher that had access to the emergency alert system type their password. So not good. Go back to, safe passwords. I said 31 as long as possible. Honestly, 14 characters or more if they're random, multiple characters. So if you use uppercase, lowercase, numbers, and symbols, and they're completely random, 14 characters is pretty good. And don't worry, I don't expect you to remember these. We're going to talk about how you keep track of these later. And then the longer the password, and then we get into things that are called like passphrases, the fewer character sets. So if you've made up some phrase, Don't quote it from the Bible. Don't quote it from any popular books. Um, if you've made up some passphrase, my dog likes to eat yellow paper with red ink, you could probably get away with using, just upper and lower. You won't need to mention any number symbols or use numbers or symbols in there because it's fairly long. I didn't count the characters, but that's a pretty good length, and it's unlikely that certainly people are not going to guess it. And it's long enough that it'll take long for people to crack it. If there's some sort of attack that they can go against, try to guess. Obviously, we need to remember some passwords because we can't have you have to bootstrap your password process, so to speak. And also it would be a pain. So one of them would be, I memorized my district email. In this case, it's our Google Apps account. I know my personal email account password. I know the password to log into my desktop. I tell people I like to know my Amazon password because I don't want a password manager get in the way between me and ordering something. And then obviously you're going to need to know the password to your password manager if you use one. There are password managers that are built into Chrome now. That would be part of if your school district is a Google Apps account. Microsoft, I think, has the same thing built into their version of Chrome called Edge. So you can also use those password managers. They obviously don't have their own password. They'll use whatever password you use to log into your apps account or your Office 365 account. And here's a really good reason why not to reuse passwords, is that it's not just about people guessing your password. It's the possibility that you hand your password to a website that is either purposely there to collect and steal your passwords, or that website has terrible security and they're doing it wrong, and your password is then exposed or taken out of there, and the bad guys have your password through exposed account details. And then the XKCD cartoon is about actually setting up something that's really useful. Like, everybody's looking for a place to host their images when they post on forums and Reddit. And if you just say, oh, use your username and password, and make them set their email as their username, then you probably have their email password because they're to log into their email account, because they're just going to use the same password. And so that's a reason to not do that. So somebody asked about browsers that ask to save your password. I don't do that because I use a third-party external password manager. And I'm going to talk about browser-based passwords when I get to password manager stuff. Do I say no for everybody? No. At the school district, in our Chromebooks, we absolutely have that enabled, because I'm not expecting students, even if I paid for it, if the district paid for it, I don't expect students would use a third-party password manager like LastPass or 1Password or Bitwarden. And so I'm giving them a way of using random passwords. And I think the browser might even offer to generate random passwords and save them. So I'm providing them a way to do that. That's a lot less friction. One of the things we deal with in security is that the most secure computer in the world is put in the bottom of a barrel with concrete poured on top of it and then dropped into the ocean. All the data on there is completely secure. It's also completely useless. And so security is a balance between usability and security, and preventing bad things from happening to your data and your information. And so in this case, password managers are a definite speed bump for some people. Well, they're a speed bump for everybody. Even for me, they're a speed bump. Would I like to use the same password everywhere? Yes, it would make so much easier. Or let's not have passwords. Just trust me when I put in my email address that it's me. But we know that that's not realistic. And so password managers are a speed bump. Third-party ones, like I said, like I'm going to talk about LastPass and other ones, are a little higher friction of entry. And so the browser ones are a good way, are better than nothing. If you'd like to see if your passwords have been any account details have been exposed, you can go to haveibeenpwned.com and you can put in your email address, and it will tell you if your email credentials were part of a leak, and it'll tell you which leak they were part of. Unless you have basically zero exposure to the internet, or your only exposure is to use like Google, I'm unaware of actually Google having leaked anything. then you probably are going to find that you're in that list. Sometimes more than once from the same company, like LinkedIn. I'm pretty sure they've had more than one. So, and then Facebook, I talked about, they lost information on 50 million users in 2018. Let's see. Okay, make sure. Oh, there we go. Password managers. So, password managers, paper. Believe it or not, paper is better than reusing, because when I tell you to use a password manager and to use paper, I'm not trying to stop muggers and thieves and robbers from getting your passwords. I'm trying to prevent internet criminals and miscreants from abusing your accounts by getting your password. And so if you pick truly random passwords, it's better to write them. If you do nothing else, it's better to write them in a little notebook and keep that notebook with you. Now, granted, if you lose it, now you're in trouble. So don't lose it. But it is better than reuse. The browser built-in ones. So they are creating random passwords. They're better than reuse. They sync with your account. Again, I say think twice before clicking yes, because make sure that you thought about this. For instance, my brother's son was able to get into some accounts on their home computer because it said, hey, I have a saved password for this. Would you like me to use it? It's not necessarily an account, like, I don't know what it was, but I just remember the story of it happening. Is like that he got into websites, financial websites or whatever they had no business getting into. And it was because they used the browser saved password. So make sure that if you are using the browser saved password, think about who has access to using that browser as you. And then third-party password managers. So Lastpass is the one I recommend, and mostly that's because I have the most experience with it. I've been using Lastpass for I think over 10 years now. I use it both, and I started out with the personal account, and then NCSA uses it for staff, and then the school district I work for, do most of my consulting for, also use it for IT staff. They have family accounts, which is pretty cool, so that you can sign up as if you're the IT person in your family, you can create a family account, and then you can generate sub accounts for the other people in your family. And if they lose their password, you can help fix them. Whereas if they'd sign up for their own account, that might be more difficult. The reason to use, if you're in an IT organization at a school, one of the reasons to use like Enterprise Lastpass is that you can actually push out policies. You can put in policies in there that say things like, there's no reason for anybody coming from outside of the United States to ever log into our Lastpass. We do this at NCSA, actually. We do have more than one country in there, but we have things, it's like, because we have conferences that people go to, and even maybe during the week of that conference, we would enable them to be able to log in from Ireland. But normally we know we don't have any employees in Ireland that would be doing work, so we just say no. You have timeout. We have things like two-factor policies. Really cool thing that Lastpass introduced, I think last year, is family. Every paid enterprise Lastpass account gets a free 6 licensed family account. So I actually was able to stop paying for my personal account and sign up for the family enterprise account, and then I gave it to other family members. It offers two-factor. So, and the other ones do that too. For instance, for my two-factor, and we'll talk about this more when we get to multi-factor, I have this little key that I keep on my key ring. I have to stick it into the USB of my computer, and it lights up. I push the button when Lastpass tells me to push the button, and then not only do I have to know my username, my password, and then I have to have this and push the button. And the cool thing about, we'll talk about YubiKeys, is that they don't need any drivers. So other cloud-based providers, the next big two that work in kind of more of the enterprise space are 1Password and Bitwarden. I know this because I believe LastPass, 1Password, and Bitwarden were the finalists for the University of Illinois is investigating enterprise password management solutions. And I think those are the 3 that they looked at the closest. And then Dashlane, I've heard about it, I've never used it. If you insist on not having a cloud password manager, there is a program, it's free and open source, called Keepass. There are concerns about using like an offline thing like Keepass. It's more difficult to do multi-factor. You keep it on like a USB or on your hard drive. So transportation's a little lower, or if it is on your USB, then if you lose that drive, it is encrypted, but that doesn't mean that people can't do what's called an offline attack, which means they can try to guess the password forever without any penalty. Whereas in a cloud-based solution like Lastpass, certainly for NCSAs, if you type your LastPass password in too many times wrong, your account's actually locked out for a period of time, and then the security team actually gets an email that says, "Hey, we locked out this user's account." And then sometimes we'll follow up with them to see, or we'll investigate it and we'll see if the IP address was one that they've used before. And we'll say, oh, they were just fat fingering their password too many times. But if it's from another country or something like that, we would be like, hey, for some reason you're under attack. And we would then know to investigate or look out closer. So after all that talk about passwords, if I cannot convince you to use a separate password that's randomly created for every possible account on the internet, which, by the way, I did this about 7 years ago. I was a password reuser. I had my good password that I reused, and I had my crappy password that I reused, kind of thing. And the one that had the % in it or something, and the other one was just numbers and letters. And I went through and found every place that I could think of that I had a password at, and I changed it to a random password. It took me like 6 hours, but it was done. And I never used another password ever again. And they're all in LastPass, and I do backup LastPass and onto a USB key and put it in my document, firebox thing, every once in a while. And so anyway, it's doable. It takes some time, yes, but it is absolutely worth it. And here's so let's say, I don't know, LinkedIn, if you're all on LinkedIn, is you go, oh, LinkedIn had a password loss, or you get an email from Menards that says, hey, I'm sorry, we had a breach, your password's been stolen. I go, and they go, you need to come change your password. When that happens to me, I go, whatever, it's Menards. They have a random password. They don't know any other information. I go there, I change my password, we're good to go. If you reuse your passwords and you use the same password you used at Menards, you used it 20 other places, you don't have to remember to go to those 20 other places and change that password too. So I just go, whatever, I've just lost access to Menards, I'll fix it. So back to, if I can't convince you now, after even that, to not use, to reuse passwords, please create strong separate passwords for your email accounts, your bank, and your mobile phone accounts. Email, because basically a lot of places allow you to recover your account if you have email. They also do multi-factor authentication using your email. They'll say, we sent a code to your email, go get the code. So if somebody owns your email account, they're going to have access to that. Your bank, it's money. Secure your money. And then mobile phone is because that's another way that your bank may secure your account. When you log into your bank, it also may say, what's your username and password? Okay, we're going to send you a text message. Please type in the code. And other accounts that you have may do the same thing. And so if somebody is able to get into your mobile phone account, they might be able to do a SIM swap so that SMS messages are now being sent to their phone. And so they're getting your second factor passwords. And then you have things like T-Mobile has a service called Digits that allows you to just get text messages in an app on your computer, which is really handy if you don't want to have long SMS conversations with somebody. You can actually do it from your keyboard. But it would also mean if a bad guy has access to, or gal has access to your T-Mobile username and password, they could set up a Digits account, and then they could make phone calls, receive phone calls and text messages and such as if they were you from your number. They can impersonate you. Definitely not something we want. Okay, I'm gonna take a break.
So I just want to reiterate what Jim said about the Menards example. I've been pwned a couple of years ago, and apparently there was a MyFitnessPal password issue. And so, yeah, oh, too bad, so sad. All I did was lose access to that one, my FitnessPal account. If they didn't get anything important like my Gmail account. I think we're good
I
to
don't see any
continue.
questions, so we just move on.
Yep. Yep.
All right. Oop. All right. So multi-factor authentication. You heard me mention
Oh,
it a couple.
sorry. I apologize. We do have one that just
Oh.
came in. What would you recommend for the little ones under 13 regarding password
So
management?
assuming that you're a one-on-one district, or if this is regarding district resources, I would just say at best enable SSO. So the school district that I work in uses Clever SSO and backed by Google. So anything that's K-12 site, you should ask them if they will do authenticate with Google and allow anybody that's from your Google domain to use their service, and keep track of it. That's very helpful. And honestly, it wouldn't be even 13 and under. I would just want to do that for all K-12 students and staff if possible. Is any service that the school district's paying for, and if you use either Microsoft Office 365 or Google Workspace. Is that what it's called now? It changes its name about every year. If you're, yeah, I think it's called Workspace for Education. If you're a Workspace for Education customer, ask these vendors if they will please enable either SSO, which is a strong correlation with your account, or just authenticate with Google. And then if it sees that they're authenticated with Google with at, Champaign Public Schools.K12ILUS or whatever it is, that they would let them log in, and that would actually be their identity. If you're sharing devices in a classroom and the students are not logging in as themselves, don't have the password manager enabled. And I don't know what to say. I mean, I would like to restrict the number of places that under 13-year-olds are having to log in, would be or any student are having to log in is actually the answer. I do think that, I don't know all schools. I think I've looked at like the Illinois IT curriculum. I think it's severely lacking in some real world use of computers. Last time I looked at it, it still mentioned floppy drives. It may have been fixed since then. But I mean, like, I would like to have students, certainly high school or middle school students and up, hear most of this talk. I'd also like to I don't know what schools are doing, but I certainly would like to see a lot more stuff about social media. And, things on the internet are forever. Even if you hit delete, they're forever, and things like that. But so back to password managers, I think the best answer is to use resources in the school district that don't require a password, that are using some form of SSO or are not required to log in at all. The the school district that I'm consult for mostly is Hoopson Public School District. It's a small one in Hoopson, Illinois. Each student has 2 accounts. They have a Google account, the Google Workspace account, that they are in charge of. They are allowed to change the password as often as as often as the policy allows. And I can force a change also, and then they can even enable 2-factor if they want and all that. And then they have a Windows Active Directory account that since we've gone one-on-one, there's almost no students are using Windows machines except in their actual computer classes. And every student has those, even all the way down to kindergarten. I think a lot of times the teachers keep track of the username and password for them, but they are logging in individually. So if necessary, they could use the built-in password manager. Any follow-up for anybody? Any K-12 people want to ask questions that are on the panel? Comment on that? Nope. Okay. All right. I'm going to move on to multi-factor. So multi-factor authentication is where you have some form of second factor. So normal username or password are 2 things you know. I know my username and I know my password. Even if it's so long that I can't remember it, it's still knowable. Whereas multi-factor is a third thing that is not knowable. In general, it's something you are or something you have. I personally prefer something you have. So a YubiKey, so that's what this is. There's also, so that's a standard YubiKey. You can also find, like, these are very helpful for people in their personal life. These are the blue U2F Fido tokens. These are like 20 or 25 bucks on Amazon. And you can use these with Amazon and Google and maybe even Facebook today. This key just sticks in. It only works with web browser apps in general. And then it lights up, you push the button. Oh, by the way, these have been in my, this YubiKey has been on my key ring for 12 years. So they're very hardy. The only problem I've ever had with YubiKeys is I accidentally was like in the winter full of static charge and I touched it and it zapped it. It just killed it. It was dead. But as soon as it zapped, I mean, it hurt my finger. It was such a good sharp zap and the YubiKey was done. But otherwise, like physically in my pocket, it's been fine. They are very robust. So what multi-factor authentication, what it gets you is, even if somebody guesses your password, such as somehow you do password reuse, or somehow they're able to steal the password from the website, and they're not going to have my YubiKey, or they're not going to have, hopefully, the other one would be like SMS on your cell phone, get a text message. And we'll talk about what order they are of strength in my mind. Again, why is it used in banking? It's because they're very strong. Just the same reason I was talking about, pick really good passwords. It's your money. You want the most amount of security in front of healthcare, your cell phone account if possible, and your money. Things that would basically, if somebody got a hold of those things, it could literally ruin your life. Those are, you want strong and security in things that could cost you heartache for years to come. And then an enterprise SSO system, if you're using Google Workspace to access, if you're going to allow teachers to log into Google Gmail, and then they can also log into your SIS system, your student information system, it would be best, in my opinion, if we get to the point where your enterprise SSO enforces multi-factor authentication. The school district, actually, I'm sure it'll be fun. In 2 weeks, the school district, we've now tied our SIS with our SSO. And so in 2 weeks, we're actually going to force multi-factor authentication on all staff. It will not be a good day. I mean, there's a bunch of staff that use multi-factor authentication, but I mean, you all know some people in your district that are going to hate it. And so do I. But it is what it is. I have the superintendent here and I had some conversations with our insurance company and the underwriters. They definitely want school districts to have multi-factor authentication in front of student information systems. They're going to start charging higher insurance liability premiums if you don't. All right, let's see. And here's a website that will tell you whether or not two-factor authentication is available for the service you use. So they'll have things on there like Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, all the social media networks, and a bunch of other stuff. Jeanette can put that into the chat. And somebody's asking, yes, absolutely. That is, well, if you don't provide so the question is, if you're enabling multi-factor access for all staff without providing security key, would that essentially force teachers to have to use their personal device to authenticate? Yes. And we will give the option. We have a pile of the blue keys here. We bought like 50 of them. And so most staff are going to want to use their personal device to do this for convenience. And this is through experience, by the way. So at NCSA, our SSO requires multi-factor authentication. And we have, it's not as convenient as the USB because we need to be able to offer things besides web access. And so we have little tokens similar to this little football thing I have where you hold the button down and then a number appears on it. don't worry, this number is not valid for anything. This is an extra. And so we offer tokens like that for staff that don't want to use their personal device. But at the end of the day, most staff actually will want this on their personal device just for the convenience sake of it, is that they don't forget their blue token at home, because how many people actually forget their phone? I mean, you get in your car and go, oh, my phone's in the house. I got to go back in and get it. And so not many people forget their phone. So yes, I agree that it's a problem. It's a concern that you don't necessarily want to force staff to use their personal devices. In general, I find that most of them will volunteer to use their personal devices, but you should have, you should be able to provide them tokens for the people that absolutely do not want to use their personal device. Or their personal device is incapable of providing the second factor authentication. We have that. The NCSA app that we use is called Duo. We don't actually allow any telephony-based authentication. That would be text messaging and phone calls. We only allow the app, and some people, they just don't have phones new enough to run the app. And so that we offer the token. So I'm not saying you force people to use their personal device or to spend money on their own. You need to have an alternative, but in my experience, staff are just going to volunteer to use their personal device for this. Okay, so I was going to talk about in my idea of roughly in order of strength of MFA. This is from least to best. So SMS codes, so that's sent through text messaging. Again, we've seen, so I have some experience with the telephone, the US telephone system, and the way things are work and are distributed. We've definitely seen attacks that don't involve taking over your cell phone account, your carrier's account, stealing your AT&T or your Verizon credentials, where they can actually trick the phone system directly by hacking the phone system, because the phone system's in general old. I mean, it's the same one that's been in operation probably since the 60s. It's been they mostly just band-aid it when they run into problems. And so people figure out how to get copies of the text messages that are sent to you for codes. We've seen employees at stores take bribes to do these things. So, and in fact, there was not exactly this. You can look it up in the news. A T-Mobile reseller was recently indicted and got some jail time for unlocking T-Mobile phones for people that were like stolen. They'd bring in a stolen phone that didn't work on T-Mobile anymore, and he would unlock them so that the person that stole the phone or bought the stolen phone could use it again. And so, these people at all these stores have access to log into your account and can move and say, oh, this customer came in and their SIM was broke. I had to give them a new SIM, or I had to sell them a new phone. And so now that phone gets your text messages. Email codes. So that's the next one. Again, email, if your email is strong, your password to get in your email is strong, it's probably okay. It's not great, but it's better than getting text messages, in my opinion. The next one is like the token, so like I said, it's called the Fido. That's FIDO. It's U2F for universal two-factor. I think they're up to version 2 now. And these are 20 or 25 bucks on Amazon. And you can register them. I know that every major browser supports them now. And you don't have to install drivers. Every major operating system will recognize it. And you can go into Google and say, I want to do a token. And it'll say, okay, stick it in and push the button. And you do. Once you do that, don't lose it. So make sure that when you do enable two-factor, that there's a thing where it says you should generate backup codes. And so I think Google's will print out like 8 or 10 backup codes. You should print those codes out and save them somewhere safe. In case something happens to your U2F token or something else happens, you can then use those as one of your codes. And then you can always generate 10 more. Funny story, I was watching it was a podcast being recorded, but it was live. They had when they recorded it, they showed it live also. And the guy switched over to using a new phone. He moved his phone number to a new phone system and enabled multi-factor. But in order to access the phone account, he had to get a text message to the phone number he just moved to the system, and he was done. And the only reason he was able to fix this, it was Google Voice, if you've ever heard of that. The only reason he was able to fix this is that I think somebody at Google like personally took charge of fixing this for him. Like normal support would have just said, well, we can't help you. But it was like you could just see the look on his face when he went, oh no, what have I done? Kind of thing. This is irrecoverable kind of thing. And then so extra questions. So this is like I got a new phone this week and I went to log into my banking app and it asked me, oh no, Mozilla just crashed. Luckily, we're not watching Mozilla for this presentation. Oops. And it was like, it said, what is your, it said, ask me something. Here's the thing about extra questions. I don't ever answer them truthfully. I actually make up an answer to every one of them and save it in Lastpass. I actually know somebody that, and even better, if you're allowed to write your own question, this is from another security person I know. If they're allowed to provide the question and the answer, they put in a dirty limerick. And so when they're on the phone and the person's like asks them the thing, and he's told me the story that he's like, he can hear the moment that they bring it up and then they look at it and they're like, and he's like, read it kind of thing, tell him you must ask me this. And then he'll, finish the punchline or whatever. Most places, I haven't seen a lot of places allow you to pick the answer or to pick the question anymore. But I just make up every one of them. We have one, I have stuff that's like, where did your parents meet? Hoboken. I don't know if my parents ever been in Hoboken. And so nobody would ever be able to guess that. And it's in LastPass. That's about as useful as I think of those things, is that I make up a different answer for every website that asks me security questions, because nobody can troll Facebook, look through yearbook.com or newspaper clippings on the internet and find out these things about me and then be able to answer a question, because I just made them up. Just don't forget to save what you made up somewhere. Google Authenticator. So that's where, and there's a bunch of these, the Microsoft Authenticator, the Google Authenticator, they're all the same. They're all based on a protocol that every 30 seconds, it comes up with a new 6-digit number. It's based on the time. Those are good. Just make sure that you either saved what's called the seed. Like when it shows you a QR code on the screen, and it says, scan this with your phone, scan this with the Google Authenticator app, scan this with the Microsoft Authenticator app, and then it does it. Print that QR code out. That QR code is not dynamic. It is specific. It is a specific seed number for your account. It goes into the cryptographic algorithm. And if you print that out and save it safe, if you break your phone and have to get a new phone, you can actually open up the Authenticator app and point it at that printout, and it'll scan in just like the day you did it the first time. I'd still recommend that, like, anytime you enable multi-factor authentication on a service like Google, is that you also generate the backup codes. Duo. So Duo is what Campus and the NCSA use. It is actually really cool because if you put it on a modern smartphone, you can say push and the phone pops up. And Google does this now too, depending on your device. I had this happen today. It pops up and says, do you want to log in? You say yes, and then it works. Obviously, the bad guy's not going to be able to fake that, right? They're not going to be able to send it to their own phone. It went to yours, which means if in the middle of the night your phone pops up and said, hey, do you want to authenticate logging in? If you didn't do it, say no. We actually had a guy that kept saying yes to this. I'm like, why would you do that? That was an attack. You reused your password. They got your password from a hacked website. They tried to log into your NCSA account, and you just said yes. You bypassed the entire point of having this service. And then Rsa Secure Id, it's up there with Duo. I don't believe they have push, but they had soft tokens, and then they also had like hard tokens like this. Now this one is you get a new number every time you push the button. The RSA ones actually had a clock and a battery in them, and they generated a new number every 30 seconds. The bad thing about them is that they had a battery that went bad. Whereas the Duo app, we don't ever actually have to reissue tokens, and you could recover your own account. When I switched phones this week, I actually followed the instructions that NCSA puts out for getting a new phone, and I was able to move my Duo from my old phone to my new phone without actually contacting IT. All right, questions on multi-factor? I feel like I'm running out of time now. I'm sorry, I don't talk fast enough.
Oh,
Sure, I see that. MFA for students. Probably not. I mean, you could give it, so I would always leave it open as an option on, let's say you're using like Google Workspace or Office 365. I would not set a policy that denies them the ability to use it. I would certainly allow them to use it, especially you get into high school where they have cell phones with them, and depending on whether or not they're allowed to have their cell phone in the building. So they could do SMS, or they could do the app push, or they could even enable it with the blue token if they wanted. So I certainly would allow them to do it. I would not. I think that it'd be more trouble than it's worth to enforce it. All right, I'm going to move right along. All right, email and phishing scams. So email is the most common point of entry for malware, although we're actually seeing things about SMS now. And things, as more people move to phones, we're seeing more of these attacks against phones. This is just a fake email that a coworker of I wrote to himself, but from our director of our department at the time. Now, granted, she didn't write this at all. But this message actually came through our mail system, because I was explaining to people this yesterday. Email, in general, when you say what an email is from, you just lie. I mean, you don't lie because you want the person to be able to hit reply and it get back to you. But the email system in general allows you to lie about where an email is coming from. Now there's safeguards in place to try to prevent a lot of this stuff now, but it's not foolproof, and it's actually relies on the person that's the server that's processing the mail to catch your lie. And if they're actually part of the team trying to scam you, obviously they're not going to stop it, and they will lie about where the email is coming from. And now this one, in this case, it would probably go back to Amy, since it says it's from her and that's a legitimate email address. But they could also do things where they would put a link in it. Click here and enter your information. And then that would be, phishing attack. And the other thing would be is always be skeptical when you're seeing email. Is you see something, either somebody sent you a document or they're requesting information, would this person ask for this normally? And then even if you think they would, so it's, the district health administrator or the finance person, I don't care who it is. If they ask for my date of birth, my social security number, or passwords, they're not getting them. I will call them. And that's the thing. When in doubt, pick up the phone, call, do a Zoom chat with them live, and talk to them about these things. Do not reply back. Do not click. Do not put this information in there. It is no fun recovering from identity theft. I had a minor case of it when the state of Illinois apparently had a really terrible, they probably still have a terrible unemployment system. And somehow somebody enrolled me in unemployment. And, apparently what they were doing was they were getting that done. And then they were either stealing the check. It's actually sent to you on like a prepaid debit card. They either were stealing them out of people's mailboxes, or then they were trying to get them redirected to them. See, there's somebody else reporting they had the same thing happen. Like it was most of the people in the state of Illinois, by the way, had this happen. And it was awful. I had to take a day off from work to deal with all the places and lock my credit and all the paperwork. And the state of Illinois unemployment office, you call them and leave a message, and sometime in the next 3 weeks they will call you. Make sure you answer the phone, otherwise you get to wait another 2 to 3 weeks. Like if you actually have to call the unemployment office to talk about something, make sure you save their number into the contacts of your phone. That way when you call you, it doesn't pop up some random number and you see that it actually says state of Illinois, unemployment. So to go, whatever you're doing, I don't care what it is. It's like, sorry, doc, I got to talk this call, kind of thing. And then, and there, it's crazy the places that still ask you to do the places just inappropriately, and they're not being malicious, they're inappropriately asking for social security numbers and stuff over electronic form. And the answer is just no. I will call you and provide it to you if you absolutely have to have it. Or I will come in. I am not going to provide that to you in any email form. If they have a secure website, that's a different thing, like Carl or somebody like that. But if it's email, the answer is just no, no exceptions. Same thing. And then, like I said, if you're in doubt, you see how, Skype, Slack, some channel that you would Skype, Slack, Google Chat, better is even phone and Zoom to talk to the person asking for it, is that just some sort of out of band channel that that isn't email or text messaging, to get a hold of somebody to ask them if they actually need that information. Gift cards, quickly, if you're in the position where you're an administrative assistant or something like that, where you might be asked to actually legitimately go buy gift cards for somebody, or a family member calls you or texts you and says, hey, I need you to go buy these gift cards, send me the number. Just, there's a thing called gift card scams. You go into like CVS or Walgreens and they actually have big like notices at the gift card section to tell you about gift card scams. That's how many people actually show up in Walmart and Walgreens and places like that to buy these. So if somebody ever texts you or emails you that you need to buy gift cards for some reason, say, I need to call and talk to you about this. Just that'll short circuit the whole thing. And it's in a hurry. Like, hey, I need this to help me get out of jail, or to buy, get my car out of hock, or get my car fixed. I'm on vacation, stuff like that. Still should just call them and recognize their voice and verify it. Remote work, most of you probably are not remote working, but there was remote work made some of these scams even easier. Again, do a second way of verifying it using video or even better voice chat. And always be skeptical and hope that light doesn't come on in your car. Questions on this? Sorry, I'm trying to rush through this to the next one because I know we're running out of time.
I think let's move forward, and if any come up, we'll take them at the end.
I'll stay late. I don't have to go at 5. All right, so this one little question about public Wi-Fi. So let's talk about like public Wi-Fi, district Wi-Fi, cellular data. So I want to stop by saying any publicly available network connectivity. All right, I'm not discriminating against whether it comes in over a wire, over the wireless. Should be sort of treated a little bit differently than you treat the network connectivity at your home. So these would be the things that, coffee shop, hotels, schools, or your friend's house. And then we'll go over. I just wanted to clarify that public Wi-Fi to me also means if you go somewhere and they have an Ethernet jack that you plug into, or even at a friend's house, because you're not the manager of their network. And so their network shouldn't be treated much different than if you were at Starbucks. Open versus closed. So this used to be whether or not if it's just an open Wi-Fi network, it also meant that all the data is in the open. There's a new protocol out called OWE. It stands for Opportunistic Wireless Encryption. It's pretty cool. It's part of the WPA3 format, which came out as part of Wi-Fi 6. So a lot of schools, if you've upgraded access points in the last year or 2 or 3, will have the possibility of having this. I became aware of it. The Hoopesville School District upgraded to a new wireless system a year ago, and we have an open network for people to use for visitors and guests. And I noticed that it said something like OWE connection. I'm like, what is this? Turns out it's an open connection, but the wireless system and the wireless device negotiate encryption, and it's actually encrypted over the air, even though they didn't have to know a password. It's really cool. And then cellular's not the the end all be all of secure internet connections. You can actually be tricked into, your phone can be tricked into joining what's called a dirt box or DRT. I can't tell you off the top of my head what this stands for, or stingray boxes, instead of a real tower. And they can redirect your data traffic and your phone calls through their own cellular tower. It's a personal cellular tower. In general, some of these things like a Dirtbox and a Stingray cost enough money that it's a law enforcement tool. It's not a hacker tool. Although the interesting thing is as we get more, there's a technology called software defined radios, SDR. As SDR gets cheaper and cheaper, we're seeing some of these technologies move closer and closer to the consumer market, or the prosumer market, as opposed to governments and government/state actors and law enforcement. There's been some recent things that are just really cool, like car fobs. I mean, really cool as from a technology standpoint, not if you're the one that gets your car stolen. So car fobs have rotating. Most of them have a rotating key thing, and these people figured out a way using SDR is that you would push your button to unlock your car, and at the exact instant that their device heard your remote send out a signal, they would send out a burst of static towards the car. So the car didn't hear it, but they recorded what the code was. And they would do that constantly until you basically went and logged and just unlocked the car by hand and got in and drove away. And then assuming you didn't use your token, your fob to unlock the car anytime till the next attack, they can actually use one of those stored tokens to unlock your car. Like I said, it's not cool if you're the one getting your car stolen. And then Honda just did things wrong, by the way. You can Google these things. It was news headlines for about a month ago. I saw it across a lot of different major websites. They just did it badly, and people are able to just use these little SDR boxes to just steal your car now, or log in, open your car. So do's and don'ts of we're going to call it public Wi-Fi, but it's basically any internet that you don't control. So what's safe to do over public Wi-Fi? Basically anything. The entire internet has moved to HTTPS, which is Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. After attacks like Firesheep and the Snowden revelations of all the things the government was doing to watch people's internet traffic, and then Firesheep was a thing where the secure tokens for logging into Facebook and such were not encrypted. And though you would go to like a coffee shop, and then you could just grab those secure tokens, kind of like the SSO tokens, and you could just log into people's Facebook with them. And so most everything has moved to HTTPS. So, if I had to use public Wi-Fi, I'm not necessarily against it. There are things that are not necessarily secret. DNS, which is domain name service, which is how the entire internet turns Facebook.com into an IP address, because the internet is all about IP number and routing. And so you wouldn't want to try to remember 212, 14, 18, 27. Instead, you remember Facebook.com. And so DNS is completely used to be completely unencrypted, interceptable. Those would be the major attacks against somebody using open wireless now. Would be they would intercept your DNS, and they would for sure know where you were going, and then they could also possibly actually give you false answers and send your computer somewhere else. But in the last few years, in fact, Firefox did this in 2020. There's a protocol called DOE. It's DNS over HTTPS. You might find it. I looked on my Android phone, and iPhones have this call also. It's called private DNS. If you enable that, when your phone is or your browser are going up again or doing DNS lookups, they're actually doing it over secure channel. And so even then, the other people in the coffee shop or the coffee shop router owner will not even see where the answers to your DNS queries or the queries that you made. So how do you know a website is secure? It's secure if there's the padlock icon in the top left-hand side of the browser. Usually I think it's green now, or maybe they keep switching around. They've gone to where if it's not there, they turn it red to get your attention. That doesn't mean it's trustworthy. That just means it's secure. It is now, there is zero cost to getting the certificate. So if you go to facebonk.com and somebody has gotten that domain, they can get a free certificate. And so it'll be secure, but that's not Facebook. And so it's not the end of the day to see that, the little padlock is closed, whether it's green or not red or whatever. You actually need to make sure that you're at the right location. In general, what I would do to do that is, either have bookmarks or use a search engine that you trust to search for things and click on them. Don't try to memorize and type in URLs. You'll avoid that's why it's called typo squatting, is because people frequently typo these URLs, and then people buy those domains, and then sometimes they do funny things with them, sometimes they do nefarious things with them. You don't want to chance it. Things that I wouldn't do necessarily on public Wi-Fi is, like, if it's not encrypted or it's extremely sensitive, I might try to avoid it. Although if you want it anonymized, maybe you want to go do it from a coffee shop. If you're whistleblowing and you're concerned about whistleblower protections, maybe you want to go to a coffee shop and send an anonymous email. So there's the possibility that you'd want to anonymize. But in general, I'm probably not going to do my banking, just out of an abundance of caution, on a public internet connection or at my friend's house. Okay, I'm done. I'm sorry I went over.
No, this is great. It's just jam-packed full of really helpful advice. So Ashley, do you want to remind our audience how to follow through with their CPU request?
Sure thing. If you are an Illinois teacher or earn PDHs for your continued professional development, there is a link in the chat, and IDEA will complete your request for the PDHs, and you should get an auto-generated email for that. We want to thank you.
Oh, we lost your audio, Ashley.
Oh, better, back on.
Yep.
We want to thank you for coming today. It was our first meeting of the school year. Lisa, Annette, and I are hoping to get a chance to meet with you in person for our next meeting, September 20th at the Champaign Public Library. That'll be from 4 to 5 p.m.
And let's just do one last call for questions. While people are typing, I want to say thank you so much, Jim, for giving us your time. We really appreciate it. There's a lot of information in these presentations, so we really hope that people take advantage of the advice of many years of experience from working at NCSA sites and in K through 12 organizations. So with that, I think we'll wrap things up. So Jim, any other last minute things you want to tell us?
No, sorry.
We got it all out of you.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again, everyone, for attending. And when I end the meeting, you'll drop off the call. So I hope you all have a good day. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.